Okay, I'm going to get started by officially welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I get together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment. The individual who we refer to as the Buddha figured out 2,500 years ago how to get to enlightenment, where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind no longer experiences any discontent feelings by the time you've trained it to get to this enlightened mental state. So you would have eliminated all the causes and conditions that is producing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that and others is eliminated from the mind. And this is accomplished through training of the mind. So we're going to start our session with a meditation, but then afterwards I'm going to share a talk with you that's going to help you to understand the teachings of the Buddha and making the way to enlightenment. Today's topic is chapter 16 from this book. This book is what we use as a guide for this program. Chapter 16 is titled Dissolving the Ego. Ego serves no purpose. This is where I'm going to help you to understand what the ego is and what the symptoms are, because it's plaguing your ability to have sustaining and fulfilling relationships and having harmony in all your relationships. And I'm going to actually teach you how to eliminate it as well. So welcome to all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is with some chanting in order to be able to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. You're welcome to chant along if you like. There's chanting sheets over there on the cabinet that will help you to be able to chant along. Now, these chants that are used here, these are to help ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So it was used as a learning tool, as a learning device, where we don't need it for that today. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer. If you see any of those kinds of things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't his actual teachings. He never taught any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. It's all about training of your mind. So we use chanting as a way to ease the mind in the meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you decide to chant along, you'll see that it helps you. If you read the English translation on these sheets, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants. They were probably created by his students either during his life or after his death. Because the Buddha wouldn't walk around and say, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me. This would be ego or arrogance. And by the time somebody gets to enlightenment, they've eliminated their ego. So the Buddha wouldn't have asked people to chant these chants or even created them. But instead, if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, they were just helping you out of the kindness of their heart, you might actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think these chants came from his students either during his life or after his death. So you're welcome to chant along if you like. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing you some guidance, or I'm essentially going to be teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're all meditating. Everyone here at the temple and anybody who's joining online will just all be meditating. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. If you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence and you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. This is why you can eliminate your discontent feelings, because it's your own mind that's actually causing them. Oftentimes people think it's the outside world that's causing you to be angry or frustrated or annoyed, but it's physically impossible for someone to insert a feeling into your mind. It's actually coming from your own mind. And the mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence, but yet you live in an impermanent world. So you're not going to be in an environment where you're meditating and it's going to be permanently quiet. These sounds are going to arise, they're going to change, and then they're going to fade away. And if you understand that this is the way the world works, when you're you're in meditation and you hear a sound, you're like, well, of course, because the world is impermanent and you can be at ease and you can be peaceful. But if you didn't understand this, you might cause your mind to be annoyed. So during the meditation, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds, and you can just rest at ease knowing that this is the way the world actually works, that it's impermanent. Sounds are going to arise, change, and fade away. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and that's where I'll start today's class, helping you to understand the topic of dissolving the ego, what this is, what the symptoms of it are, the complications that it causes you because of your ego, and then how to actually eliminate it and uproot it, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have an ego in your mind. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times because it's kind of like having a tool belt, and you use these different tools at different times in order to be able to help you in your journey to enlightenment. So there's various classes, courses, and retreats where you can learn these different positions. I'm going to introduce you to the seated position today because that's how a lot of people oftentimes are starting out. But just understand what I'm sharing with you are recommendations or suggestions. There's not just one way to actually sit in meditation, because that would be permanence, and we live in an impermanent world. Everybody's body is a little bit different, and they'll find different things to be comfortable. So you can sit however you like, whether it's something that I'm sharing with you or if it's something that you've come up with on your own. You're welcome to sit however you like. But just as some suggestions to help you, if you're on the floor in a chair, maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair, you can sit however you like. Those of you on the floor, you might have some cushions under your ear. Also, even if you're in a chair, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might decide to just do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, this can impede the circulation in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up, or you might just rest them comfortably in your lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. Same thing is true for anybody who's in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. Some people like to put the feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed, so this is an option as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever is comfortable for you. In terms of the upper body, it's helpful if this is erect. With the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. What meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind would be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only will it keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do some chanting to ease into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join in, and then I'll come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Wat Tung Mahakewanang Apiwateyami Sawakato Mahakewata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakawato Sawakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสเอมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตูอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawandhang Abhivateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakatoro Kawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone online as well. This is breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a primary form of training, a meditation that the Buddha used in addition to other things to be able to move his mind to enlightenment. The goal of this meditation is to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. Oftentimes people think the goal of this meditation is to eliminate your thoughts based on the guidance, but this isn't the case. In fact, you're not going to ever be able to eliminate your thoughts as long as you're alive. You're going to have thoughts. You need those thoughts. But what you're doing with meditation is you're exercising the mind to be able to build this internal mechanism in the mind to be able to cut off and let go. And this is going to really help you as part of your journey to enlightenment, that you're building this mindfulness or awareness of mind, that you can notice things that are in your mind and you can cut off and let go. This is going to help you to be able to transform your mind. So there's meditation that you need as part of this path, but there's other things that you need as well. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment. In fact, that's one of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha, is that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. And this actually isn't true. There's multiple techniques, there's multiple things that you need to understand in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to help you to understand one of those topics that you're going to need in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. Today's topic is all about dissolving the ego, because the ego serves no purpose. There's no purpose for this ego that is in the mind, but there is an ego in the unenlightened mind, and it needs to be eliminated, because as long as there's an ego in the mind, it's going to hinder you from being able to have harmonious relationships with people around you, because you're going to end up putting yourself above people and below people, and it's going to hinder you from being able to just have loving kindness towards all beings. So I'm going to start off with helping you to be able to see what the ego is and the symptoms of it and how it's plaguing your ability to have harmonious relationships with the people around you. But then we're going to really focus on eliminating the ego, because that's what you need to be able to do to make your way closer and closer to enlightenment, is to get rid of this. As we go, I'm going to be stopping a few times and pausing for questions. If you guys have questions, you're more than welcome to ask questions. We have microphones there in the middle of the room. We also have some up here as well. If you could just get a microphone and take it back to your seat, press the gray button, you're going to see the lights come on. And if you hold this up to your chin, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you could just share it with them. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. And then for anybody who's online, whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions you like that way. So first, let's just start with understanding what the ego is. This word ego didn't actually exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. So he actually did other things, and he described it in other ways, which is actually very helpful to understand it in the way that the Buddha understood it. But we're actually combining a few things from the teachings of the Buddha to use this word ego. The word ego didn't really exist until recently, in the last few hundred years. So the Buddha describes this, what we refer to as an ego, in a different way. But first, let's just talk about what we're describing as the ego, and then I'll help you to split it out and see how the Buddha described it, because it's actually helpful for you to see it that way. So what we're referring to as the ego is a collection of experiences from the past and our future expectations of ourselves. The ego is accumulated from our thoughts, our ideas, our perceptions of our self-image and our self-identity, how we want to appear to others in terms of our self-image and the physical appearance that we have, and also a certain identity in the mind, like our culture, our ethnicity, our sexual orientation, our nationality, our job or occupation. The mind can form ego around these kinds of things. The ego contains arrogance, pride, judgment, measuring and comparing yourself as being superior or inferior to other people. What the ego will do is you'll tend to put yourself above others and look down on people, and you will talk down to those types of people who you think you're above. And when you put yourself below people, you'll tend to be shaken up around those people, uncalm and unsteady. So maybe if you go in and talk to your boss and you feel all shaken up around this person, or maybe like a celebrity, if you're around a famous politician or a celebrity, you might feel shaken up around that person, like you're less of a person. And this is just as detrimental to your mind. Putting yourself above others is detrimental because you'll talk down to people, but putting yourself below others is just as detrimental and dangerous to your mind. But if your mind has this ego, which every unenlightened mind pretty much has it, you're going to put yourself above people. And in some cases, you're going to put yourself below people. And this is really detrimental to you. So this is what the ego is. And as I mentioned, the word ego didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. So he doesn't use the word ego, but what you'll see him referring to instead is something called personal existence view and conceit. This is part of the 10 fetters. The way that the Buddha figured out how to get to enlightenment is he figured out these 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind. We refer to them as the 10 fetters. These 10 pollutions need to be eradicated and eliminated out of the mind. Some people refer to them as taints or defilements or pollutions, but the Buddha referred to them in those ways, but also he referred to them as the 10 fetters. The reason why is because during his lifetime, if you were someone that they were trying to keep confined to a certain area, like a prisoner or a criminal, they would put a fetter around your ankle. A fetter is a shackle and a chain and a ball, and they would keep you out in the middle of a field. And this is how they kept you confined to a certain area. And today we put people in jail cells, and that's how we keep those types of people confined to a certain area, where during his lifetime they would attach a fetter to your ankle. So when he discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, he refers to them as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state, continuing to experience the difficulties and struggles of things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that is experienced because of these 10 fetters, these 10 pollutions. You also notice that you'll lack concentration, focus, clarity, and deep memory in your mind because your mind's not performing optimally as long as it has these fetters or these pollutions in the mind. You'll notice that you have difficulties and struggles in your personal and professional relationships. Oftentimes when you're struggling in a relationship, people blame that on the other person, but in reality, it's coming from your own mind. It's coming from decisions that you're making, that you can actually get to a point where all your relationships are harmonious. You can get to a point where you don't even experience a bad mood any longer. That is actually all coming from your own mind. So the Buddha figured out what these 10 pollutions are, and he figured out the tools and the techniques of how to uproot these and purify the mind, removing those out of the mind, and that's where the mind's experiencing enlightenment. Slowly but surely, you eliminate these pollutions as part of your training on the path to enlightenment, and now you'll experience more and more qualities of enlightenment. So it's through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you're gradually decreasing these pollutions of the mind, and that's what's actually producing more and more of the qualities of enlightenment. One of the ways you might think about it is that if you had the sun and there were clouds in front of the sun, and you peeled away the clouds of this that are blocking the sun, you'd see more and more of the qualities of the sun shining through. More and more of the rays of the sun will shine through. So while we call it attaining enlightenment, one of the ways you might think about it is that your mind's actually already enlightened, but you've got these pollutions that are in the way, hindering you from being able to experience it. And as you peel these away and get rid of these pollutions, the qualities of enlightenment will start shining through more and more. But the only difference in the analogy here is that with the clouds, they're going to come back and they're going to block the sun at some point. But by the time you eliminate these pollutions out of the mind, they will never come back. They're completely eradicated out of the mind. They're no longer going to come back into the mind ever again. So with these 10 fetters, there's 2 fetters or 2 pollutions that we are combining and calling the ego. But the Buddha rightfully separated these 2 things or described them as 2 separate things because they actually produce different symptoms, and there's also different techniques to be able to eliminate these 2 particular fetters. So I'm going to explain to you what these 2 fetters are so that you'll understand the problems that you're experiencing because of them. And the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. It's about doing this inner work of learning, growing, and developing, becoming a better and better person to cultivate wisdom. So don't believe what it is that I'm sharing with you about these pollutions, but instead, when you hear me describe what these pollutions are and the symptoms that you experience because of them, you can confirm that your mind actually has these pollutions that are in your mind. Because the teachings of the Buddha aren't about a bunch of beliefs of hoping something good will happen when you die. Instead, it's about learning, growing, and developing in this life to get to a better life now. It's not about rules and commandments. It's not about rites or rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. None of that stuff is part of the teachings of the Buddha. So you need to cultivate wisdom to be able to see the truth about what's going on in your mind. One of the ways that you might think about the teachings of the Buddha is that he took human psychology and he boiled it down to a common language that everybody can understand. And now by understanding how your mind works, you can work with it skillfully to be able to train it to get to this point where you're experiencing enlightenment. So I'm going to help you to understand these fetters, but like I mentioned, don't believe me, don't believe what I write in books, don't believe anybody else. You need to be able to independently verify what you're hearing to be the truth through learning, investigating, and examining his teachings, through reflecting to verify if they're true or they're false, and then through practicing the teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life and training your mind through those teachings. That's where you'll see the real results and the real improvement in your life. So this first fetter that we're calling as part of the ego is called personal existence view. This is where the mind is confused. It has a lack of wisdom. It has a misunderstanding. It thinks that this body and or this mind is you and who you are as a person. The mind will cling to a certain self-image or a self-identity, wanting others to perceive you in a certain way. So the mind is confused in these situations where it's thinking that this self-image, this self-identity around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, or your job or occupation is who you are as a person. And now the mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way, and you can only be happy when people are perceiving you that way. So, for example, if you've ever been in a social situation and you spilled something on your clothing and you were embarrassed by that, that's your personal existence view, because you're clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and you can only be happy if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. When you have clean clothes, you want to be perceived that way. But when you have a dirty mess on your shirt and you're going out and people are seeing this body look in that way, your mind's clinging to this self-image, wanting others to perceive you a certain way, and now this body looks messy and sloppy, and your mind's thinking that this is who you are as a person, and you're not going to be perceived the way you want to be perceived by others, and you might be frustrated or agitated or embarrassed in that situation. Or say you've maybe stood in front of your closet and you thought, who am I going to see today, and how do I want to look? And you started thinking about all the different people you're going to see and what clothes you have. And maybe you put on a certain set of clothes and you looked in the mirror and you're like, no, that's not it. And you put on a second set of clothes and you looked in the mirror and you're like, no, that's not it. And you put on a third set of clothes and you're like, okay, now I feel comfortable to go outside, right? You didn't feel comfortable until this body looked a certain way. The mind's clinging to this body, this self-image. Or maybe you looked in the mirror and you saw a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole, or you saw a gray hair, or you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that. That is your personal existence view, clinging to this self-image, wanting others to perceive you in a certain way, and you could only feel comfortable if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. So this wrinkle or this mole or this pimple or gray hair, you're losing your hair, you didn't feel comfortable with that. Where all that really is just change. The body's just constantly changing because we live in an impermanent world. If you were like me when I was a child and I was growing up as a teenager, I used to get out the gel and the mousse and I would run it through my hair, and I tried to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I'd go to school. I couldn't go outside and go to school without getting my hair in exactly the right spot. And I would do this sometimes so much that I would actually miss the school bus because I was late, right? Because it's been so much time trying to get every little hair in exactly the right spot, right? So this is the self-image part of personal existence view that the mind's clinging to and forming certain feelings based on how you think you're being perceived by others. And this is part of the confusion that the mind has, that this body isn't truly you. It's not who you are, but the mind will cling to it, again, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way and only feeling comfortable when you're being perceived that way. Then there's a certain self-identity that your mind will cling to based on your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, or your job or occupation, any number of things. For example, if you've been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you thought, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. And when you guys were together, there was a certain amount of comfort in that. But when you guys broke up and you were single, your mind didn't identify with I am single. And you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. The mind thought that that was the way to solve this uncomfortableness, that when you were uncomfortable as a single person, that's because your mind was identifying with I am a boyfriend or girlfriend. But now you're not in that role anymore. And that uncomfortableness that you're experiencing, the mind thinks the way to solve it is hurry up and get back in another relationship so I can reassume that identity, rather than just eliminating this idea that I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, understanding that you're not always going to be a boyfriend or girlfriend. So the mind can cling to this identity of who you think you are, or maybe your nationality. Like I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Chinese, or I am German, I am Lithuanian, I am Mexican. Any of this I am. You might cling to this as who you think you are as a person. And now say you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody says something very favorable about the nationality that you're holding in your mind. They might say, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. I've never actually heard this before, but maybe they might say this, right? And now if you identify that way, you might be like, wow, they're talking about me. And you get all these pleasant feelings. But then because of impermanence, it's only a matter of time before 2 tables over, somebody says something degrading or disparaging or diminishing about the nationality that you're holding in your mind. And now you might be frustrated or angry. You might be ready to fight because you might think they're talking about me. Well, this is just all part of the mind's lack of wisdom. It's the confusion that the mind holds on to holding on to this identity in your mind of who you think you are. Or maybe you've had a certain job or occupation, like maybe I am a police officer, and now you cling to this, right? And now when you're doing that job, you feel really great. But 10 years, 15 years into your career, maybe you get injured, maybe you get laid off, maybe you retire or whatever happens, and now you're driving a taxi and you're disgruntled and angry and frustrated because you think in your mind, I am a police officer, where in reality, that's just your personal existence view. And now with you driving a taxi, you don't identify with I am a taxi driver. Now you're disgruntled and frustrated driving a taxi because the mind is holding on to this. You can hold on to any number of things of who you think you are as a person. One time I had a student that contacted me shortly after COVID, and they said, David, I need your help with something. I said, sure, what's going on? They said, I'm having all these difficulties since COVID, and I need to figure out what's going on here. Can you help me? I said, sure, what's happening? He said, well, when I used to go to certain places, like ordering a coffee, I would just order my coffee. I would give them my money. They would give me the change. It was a 30-second transaction. I would get my coffee and I'd be on my way. And he said, but now when I'm ordering my coffee, they have contactless payment and I can't hand them my money and just get my money back. I have to tap this thing, and they're turning their screen around and it says, how much do you want to tip? 15%, 20%, 25%, 30%. And he said, David, I don't tip in these situations, but I want you to know I am a great tipper, David. I am a really great tipper, but I really feel conflicted and uncomfortable in these situations. And I don't understand why. I don't tip because it's just a short transaction. I don't think I have to tip, but I typically tip and all these other things. And he's like, David, I just want to reassure you, I am a great tipper. Right. And I was like, oh, okay, I see what's happening is you're holding on to this identity of I am a great tipper. And when you tip, you feel comfortable. But when you don't tip, you feel uncomfortable. And he's like, oh, okay. So this was his personal existence view, clinging to this, right? Thinking that this is who he is as a person. And the mind was uncomfortable in the situation where it wasn't tipping. So your mind can cling to all these things. You might have even been taught in the past, if you've used drugs and alcohol, that now in the present moment, even though you no longer use drugs and alcohol, someone might have taught you that I am an alcoholic or I am an addict, right? I understand why people teach this, because they're teaching you to never go back to use drugs and alcohol ever again. But what's happening here is the individual has adopted in their mind of who they think they are based on choices and decisions that they made in the past. There's certain choices and decisions that we make, and now someone adopts an identity of who they think they are based on those choices and decisions that they made in the past, where that's not true. This individual might have chosen to use drugs and alcohol in the past, but that doesn't define who they are as a person. And now if you have that identity in your mind of I am an addict or I am an alcoholic, there can be guilt and shame and other discontent feelings like this that are in the mind. So this is the personal existence view, and this needs to be eradicated from the mind. When we were in the animal world, we had this personal existence view because we really needed it. When we were, say, a deer in the middle of a meadow eating grass, and there was a lion or a tiger or something like that lurking in the jungle, we needed to know, oh my gosh, I'm a deer and that's a tiger and I need to run. Right? Because if I stay here, I'm going to end up dying, right? We needed this personal existence view. But here in the human world, we actually don't need this. And then there's something called conceit. Conceit is the arrogance, the pride, the measuring and comparing, thinking of yourself as being above people or below people. And as long as your mind is doing this, you're going to talk down to some people and you're going to talk up to other people, and you're going to be shaken up around those people. This conceit is something that you can eradicate from the mind, but you need to first understand what it is and how detrimental it is to the mind. So when you're putting yourself above people, you might think that you're superior to them, maybe intellectually or financially or your social status, maybe your education or something like that. Maybe your job or occupation, you might be looking down on people, or you might be putting yourself below people and looking up to others with such awe that you think you're less of a person, and you're diminishing yourself in your mind. You might even have this negative self-talk in your mind, this inner dialogue where you're constantly degrading and diminishing yourself. This isn't healthy to walk around with that. So this conceit that the mind has, where you're putting yourself above and below people, it's like the mind's trying to find a pecking order. It's like you go into a social situation and someone might roll up to you and say, hey, what do you do? And it's like, oh, I'm a lawyer. I practice law. Well, really, I'm a doctor. Right. And now, like, there's this pecking order that people are trying to find. And it's uncomfortable to be in that situation for yourself, that you are putting yourself in that situation, perhaps where you're trying to figure out, are you above or below people? And this is something that's detrimental to your mind. And again, this also comes from our animal existences. This cycle of rebirth that the Buddha taught, that we've all been other beings in the past, this is not something to ever believe in. You can actually independently verify this to be the truth right now. Or not right now, but right now you might not be able to verify this. You actually might be thinking and believing that you only have one life, where in reality there's been multiple lives. Because in the animal world, we actually needed conceit. If we didn't have conceit, we wouldn't have survived. When we were a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male, who's the alpha female, because they're teaching us how to hunt. And we needed to be able to understand how to survive as a pack of wolves. And if we didn't know how to hunt, we wouldn't have been able to survive. Or like when we were a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd, because she's showing us where the watering holes are. She's showing us where the migration paths are. She's showing us where the food is. If we didn't know who the matriarch of our herd is, we wouldn't have been able to learn those things. We would just be a single roaming elephant in the jungle, not necessarily knowing how to take care of ourselves. So we needed this well-defined pecking order in the animal world in order to survive. But when we come into this human world, our mind retains this. And now we're looking for this pecking order whenever we're among a group of people. And this is just hindering you from being able to have sustaining, fulfilling, and satisfying relationships, because your mind will tend to put yourself above people and below people. And you either talk down to people or you'll look up to people with such awe that you'll be shaken up. So we're going to talk more about the symptoms of these things and how it's actually plaguing your ability to have a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life. But I'd like to just pause here and see if you guys have any questions on what personal existence view is and or conceit. Are there any questions here that you guys would like to ask? Yeah, Judy. Should have fresh batteries, but you never know.
Hello. So my question is about personal existence view. And I understand what you're saying is the body isn't you and the labels are not you. But does that extend to the mind as well?
Yes, because the mind is going to hold on to the certain identity. And some of them are culture, ethnicity, sexual orientation, nationality, and job or occupation. But it can really be anything, like I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, or I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, or any number of other things, like I am a great tipper, right? So these are some of the things that the mind can cling to of who you think you are as a person. Even this gender, not that, we would necessarily suggest that someone consider themselves not to be a particular gender. If somebody thinks of themselves that way, that's fine. But if you think of yourself as I am a woman or I am a female, when you hear someone say all females are blah, 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 you'll get really angry and really frustrated. Or if they say all females are lovely and warm and gentle, wow, you'll feel really pleasant about that. So it's a matter of understanding the role that you're in terms of, like, I think you're a mother, right? You're a mother. You've been a nurse in the past or administrator of a medical facility. It's a matter of performing these roles without clinging to it and as who you are as a person. So it's a matter of understanding that this body was born on a land that is referred to as the USA or America, but your mind doesn't have to adopt that identity of who you think you are as a person. And this is where the freedom and the liberation is, because as long as you hold on to anything of who you think you are, Well, some people are going to talk favorably and some people are going to talk unfavorably. And that means your mind's going to be thinking of this as agreeable and disagreeable. And you can only be happy when people talk about you in this way, because there's a you here, thinking that there is a you. And now when people talk to you in a disagreeable way, you'll think that this you that you're holding on to, now you're uncomfortable. So the exact words of the Buddha is, he says, there is no you there. Right? There's no you there. So he talks about that there is a physical body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence, and it's wise to take care of these things. And he refers to the combination of the body and the mind as a person, but he describes that this isn't who you are, because you can see how the mind gets confused. Because if someone says, wow, you look so beautiful in that shirt, it really brings out the colors of your eyes, then you're like, wow, you feel so great when people talk to you like that. But it's only a matter of time before somebody says, where did you get that haircut? Are you going outside looking like that? And now you're frustrated and angry, right? So you've got to let go of holding on to any of this stuff as who you are, but at the same time, take care of it, because it's wise to take care of this body. This is the middle way. Whereas if you held on to it and crave for it to be permanent, you're not going to be peaceful and joyful there. If you swing to the other side, where you could care less about this body or this mind, and you're not doing things to maintain it, you're not going to experience peace and joy there either. So there's a middle way where you take care of it, but you don't cling to it and form feelings based on it, understanding that it's constantly changing. Right?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Still working. Okay. So just to follow up on this question, that I am a person, is it already like, is there because non-self, am I a person?
Yeah, as soon as you insert that I am, that's the personal existence view. I am a person. I am a human being, right? Because someone says all human beings are blah, 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 blah. If you identify with I am this, as soon as you hear that, boom, your mind's going to be triggered, right? So you've got to let that go, where you realize that we refer to this configuration as a human being, but the mind doesn't have to adopt the identity of this is who you are as a person. So the mind's personal existence view will constantly be trying to grasp at something. The mind will say, well, if I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, then what am I? That's the mind continuing to grasp and trying to hold on to something. And as soon as you try to grasp and hold on to something as who you think you are, when it changes, you won't like that. So that's why the Buddha teaches you to take care of all of this, but don't identify with any of it as who you are as a person. Because when it changes, that's where the discontentedness comes in, because the mind doesn't like change in the unenlightened state. It craves permanence. So you need to be careful with allowing the mind to grab onto any of this stuff and train your mind to let it go. And right now, the mind has certain accumulated things in your mind. Like you probably think, I am a mother, I am a daughter, I am this, I am that. And this is where people have a lot of struggles. Like say their child moves out of their home and their child doesn't contact them as frequently anymore. And now they feel lost and confused because they're not providing this motherly guidance or this fatherly guidance anymore. And now they feel kind of lost in the world because for maybe 20 years, 25 years, they've been close by with this person, and now this person's gone, and they kind of don't have that identity of I am a mother firm in their mind anymore. And now they feel like less of a person or unwhole, where the Buddha is teaching you to understand that you're performing this role as a mother, and there's certain things that you're going to be doing now, but that's all going to change in the future. So if you allow your mind to grab onto this, now when everything changes, you'll experience discontentedness. Mm-hmm.
So what is or who is there that exists? I'm just struggling. Should there be like any identification, right? It's just difficult for me. Like, so am I a being? Like this combination is a being, or like I should try to just get away of anything of this sort. So difficult for me, you know.
Yes, it is very difficult because people have spent so much time accumulating a personal existence view. Ever since birth, we were given a label, right? Yours is Martha, mine is David, right? Everybody here has a certain label, and now we have a certain personality and character. And then our countries have a national anthem and a flag and sports teams and cheering for this of who you think you are. I am Polish, right? Well, the mind has accumulated this, so it's really hard to be able to see through, like, I am none of that stuff, because the mind has been holding on to it. But the answer is yes. None of those things define who you are. When I look at this being, of course, I see a human being, and over here I might see a mosquito, right? And I know what these two things are, and we use these labels in order to make it easy for us to communicate. But your mind needs to let go of holding on to that as who you think you are as a person. So it's a matter of understanding that, yeah, this is a human being, but I don't need to identify with that and cling to that in my mind as who I think I am. You can fulfill this role as being a mother without allowing your mind to cling to it as who you think you are. Even like being a resident of Thailand, because I think you live here, right? So even the idea if someone said, all people who live in Thailand are blah, 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 blah. Well, now you're going to be angry and frustrated because you see yourself as a resident of Thailand, right? Instead, you just realize that none of this is to be clung to, that you need to be able to train your mind that, yes, there's these certain things that I do, there's these certain things that I experience, but I don't need to cling to any of it as who I think I am as a person. Mm-hmm.
The last one. So even if because I would like to be a kind person, right? So I would like to identify myself with this. So it's the same thing, right?
Exactly. It's a matter of being a kind person without allowing your mind to identify with it. Because maybe 99.99999% of the people in your life say, wow, Martha, you're so kind, you're so friendly, you're so warm. But it's only a matter of time before somebody says, Martha, you're the meanest person I've ever met. Oh my gosh, you're so angry, or whatever they say, right? And now if you're holding on to that idea of I am a kind person, you will be frustrated. You'll be angry in that situation. So it's a matter of making the choice to be kind and friendly and warm and gentle without allowing your mind to adopt that as your identity. Yep.
Kindness, practicing kindness, but
Yes.
not identifying that I'm kind.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Anytime you have that I am, that's the personal existence view. And now the conceit is going to wrap around that, right? I am more kind than other people. I am the kind one here. Out of all these people here, I am kind. So there's the personal existence view that you have. Then the conceit comes in where you want to put yourself above or below people. And this is what we refer to as the ego. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't see any other questions either here or online. So let me explain to you more of the symptoms that you experience because of this, the difficulties and challenges, because this ego, now that you understand the splitting out, the personal existence view and the conceit, whenever I say the word ego, I'm talking about these two together. But eventually I'm going to split them back out and I'm going to show you how to eliminate them, because the techniques of how to eliminate these are different from personal existence view to conceit. But whenever I talk about the ego, I'm talking about both of these together. Okay, so this ego will project unwholesome qualities onto others and then read that reflection as coming from the other person, when in actuality, it's coming from your own mind. Here's an example of what I mean by that. Let's just say you're in a business meeting and somebody walks into the meeting and boy, do they look handsome. Boy, do they look beautiful. They have every little hair in exactly the right spot. They have the perfect skin tone. Their face is just so nice. They have the most sharpest clothes on and they just walk into the room. And you might think to yourself, look at them trying to look so beautiful. Look at them trying to look so handsome. No, that's not what's happened at all. All that's happened is somebody walked into the room. Right? The mind's ego wants to look handsome to other people. The mind's ego wants to look beautiful to other people. And now when you see somebody walk in that you consider to be handsome or beautiful, your mind is projecting that ego onto that other person. And now you're reading that reflection from them as coming from them, when in reality it's coming from your own mind. Because the only thing that's happened is somebody walked into the room. That's all that's happened. The fact that this person's hair looks a certain way, their clothes look a certain way, their skin tone is a certain thing, that's just the physical presence of this person. But your mind's projection of your ego is thinking, look at them wanting to look so handsome. Look at them wanting to look so beautiful. When in reality, it's your own mind wanting to look beautiful and handsome to other people. But you're projecting that onto other people and reading that as coming from them, when in reality, it's coming from your own mind. And now when you're in the business meeting and this person speaks up, there's this resentment and hostility towards this person, or you might be frustrated and angry towards them. And all your other coworkers see that. And now it reflects poorly on you. And all of that's just coming from your own mind, right? So the mind does that with its ego. It will project its unwholesome qualities onto others. And the mind will judge other people, trying to determine what is wholesome or unwholesome for other people. You'll look down on other people, thinking that they should do things the same way as you. The ego thinks I'm right and everybody else is wrong. And if everybody does it my way, the world would be perfect, right? This is the mind's ego. In fact, I was just on Facebook last night and I saw somebody in a Facebook group. They were talking about someone negotiating prices here in Thailand. And they were saying, oh, this is wrong. You shouldn't negotiate prices in Thailand. The Thai people don't have much money. And why should you negotiate prices? Well, that's the way that that person functions, that they choose not to negotiate prices. But they encountered someone at the market who was negotiating prices and they took exception to it. And they were really frustrated and angry. And they said they just couldn't get it out of their mind. It wasn't in the Facebook group that I administer, but I saw it in another Facebook group. This is the mind's ego looking down on somebody else. Just the fact that they were negotiating a price, they think that I am better than them and they are bad because I am doing things the right way. Right? This is the mind looking at other people's life and trying to determine what is wholesome or unwholesome for them instead of focusing on their own life. Right? This is the mind craving permanence, wanting everybody to do things your way. So the mind will judge others and look down on people or put yourself above people. There's something called perceptions that the mind will tend to cling to around its personal existence view and around conceit. What perception is it's a belief or opinion of how things seem to be, which may or may not actually be true. So a perception is not necessarily the truth. And if you base your decisions on a perception, it's going to lead to unwholesome results in your life. So I'll explain this to you using a different example. So police officers are taught to not cling to their perception. If they cling to their perception, they can make a life or death decision that causes lots of calamity and difficulties in the world. So for example, a police officer could be dispatched down to a store. Over the radio, they might hear that a certain store is being robbed. And now they're told, go down to this store. The store's being robbed. You need to go down there and solve this. And of course, they speak differently on the radio. They don't speak like this, right? So they have all these codes and all these kinds of things, right? But now they race off to the store. Sirens are blaring, lights are blaring, rushing down to the store. And maybe they go to the store and they sling open the door to this store and they see a person laying on the floor with a gunshot wound, bleeding. And then they see someone in a black hoodie holding a gun, pointing it at that person. Well, if this person clings to their perception, the police officer, they might walk in and pull out their gun and start shooting the person with the black hoodie holding the gun. And if they've clung to a perception, they could have just killed an innocent person. Because the person in the black hoodie with the gun could have been the cashier that ended up somehow managing to get this gun away from the robber, and they ended up shooting the robber, and now the robber is the one on the floor bleeding. So police officers are trained not to just walk in and start shooting, right? They can't cling to a perception because they weren't there. They don't know the truth. They don't know who's who, right? So they walk in, they pull their gun, and they say, police, police, put your gun down. Now, if you're the robber and you turn and you look and it's the police, you're probably going to point your gun towards the police officer, right? But if you're the person who's the cashier and you hear police, police, put your gun down, oh, thank goodness the police are here, and you'll gladly put your gun down, right? And this is how the police are trained to not cling to their perceptions. So if you cling to a perception of what you think is true, you actually could be making a very unwise decision in your life. Let's just say that you tell your child to clean their room. And they're like, sure, mom and daddy, I'll clean my room, no problem. And now you leave and you're gone for like 2 hours, and you come back and you open their bedroom door and they've got books and toys all over the floor, and it's an utter mess. If you cling to your perception that they didn't actually clean their room, you might get really angry and frustrated in that situation. But they might have actually been cleaning their room. Instead of just clinging to your perception and yelling and hollering at the child, instead, what you would be wise to do is walk in and say, hey, I thought you were going to clean your room. Right? You ask them a question because you weren't there for the last 2 hours. And now they say, yeah, I did clean my room, mom and dad. By the time I cleaned my room about 1 minute ago, right before you walked in, I bumped into my bookshelf and all the books and the toys flew all over the floor. And that's what you're seeing now. Right? But if you just walk in and cling to your perception, thinking they didn't clean their room, you might start yelling and hollering and screaming at a child that otherwise has actually done something very wise, which is clean their room. So your ego will form certain perceptions of who you think you are as a person. And it'll form certain perceptions of who you think other people are as a person. And now you're going to measure and compare yourself. And this is going to lead to unwholesome results because you're going to make unwise decisions based on your ego projecting these unwholesome qualities on others and reading that as coming from them when in fact it's really coming from your own mind. The mind not only does that with unwholesome qualities, but it does it with wholesome qualities too. Let's just say that you've recently switched to eating plant-based food and you think, I am a vegan, right? And now maybe you think everybody in the world should be vegan. How dare you eat that meat, right? You want this blood in your mouth and the flesh of the animal. I'm such a better person than you. And now somebody thinks that way and looks down on other people because they eat meat, right? This is the ego. This is the personal existence view and the conceit. The mind identifies with, I am a vegan, and now it has craving, thinking that everybody in the world should be a vegan. And now there's this conceit of putting yourself above and below other people. And it just stands in your way of having loving kindness towards all beings, because you can't just see people as they truly are, which is just a human being who's going through life. You don't need to project your wholesome and unwholesome qualities onto others, measuring and comparing. Instead, you can just love everybody. But when this ego is in the way, you can't love everybody. And as you're being arrogant and egotistical towards people, talking down to them, people will tend to push you away. This is what will happen, is that people tend to not like individuals with ego because they're constantly trying to measure and compare themselves to you. And what people will tend to do is push that individual away, because they're not interested in having that person around, and they'll tend to not have relationships with that person because of this arrogance. And you'll have difficulties just loving all people and having harmonious relationships with people because you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. So this ego stands in your way of having fulfilling, sustaining, and harmonious relationships. This ego serves no purpose. There's no reason to have this ego in the human world. But because we've all had all these animal existences in the past, the mind retains this, and now is a time to be able to eliminate this, and you'll experience more improvement in your relationships when you get rid of this ego and within your own mind as well. So you guys have any questions on this? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to eliminate this out of the mind. Any questions? No questions? Okay. So now I'm going to break it down again through personal existence view and conceit, because the techniques of how to eliminate this is different from one thing to the other. And this is where you can see that the teachings of the Buddha are much beyond just meditation. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment. You're going to need to do other things, in order to be able to train your mind to be able to make your way to this enlightened mental state. So this personal existence view, where the mind's clinging to your self-image and your self-identity, wanting others to perceive you in a certain way, these are the things that you can do in order to eliminate it. First, there's a meditation to realize non-self. This is a meditation that I teach as part of various programs and courses that I share. This is something that you bring in when your mind's starting to experience what's called the jhanas. The jhanas are preliminary phases that your mind goes through where there's enhanced qualities of mind. And you can identify that your mind is actually in these jhanas when you understand what they are. The way you get into these jhanas is you actually practice the core central teaching of the Buddha called the Eightfold Path. That's where everybody would be wise to start out. Using the resources that I share, which are the original words of the Buddha, you can actually learn his teachings using his own words. And now if you train your mind through the Eightfold Path, you'll start to experience the jhanas, which are these preliminary phases where you have these enhanced qualities of mind. Eventually, you'll get into the first, second, and third, and fourth stage of enlightenment, where the mind's ultimately enlightened when you get to the fourth stage. But on your way to that, you'll experience these jhanas, these enhanced qualities of mind. That's where you start using this meditation to realize non-self. If you just started using it right from the beginning of your training, it's not going to have the same impact because you really need to use the Eightfold Path first, get that well underway before you bring this meditation in. So I'm not going to teach this meditation today because I've taught it other days. It's actually in chapter 11 of this first book, and it's on our YouTube channel. It's on our podcast. You can find it many different ways. But again, you need to focus on the Eightfold Path first. Then you can change your language to disassociate the mind with things like mine. What the mind will tend to do in connection to relationships, objects, and various life situations, it'll think mine, 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 because of this personal existence view. It's like my phone, my money, my house, my car, mine, 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 mine. Right? And the mind will tend to identify with these things like my house is so beautiful. Look how great it is. Or my car is so shiny. It always stays nice and clean. And you start identifying with who you are as a person through these objects. And there's this my, mine, 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 mine. In fact, the English language is kind of unfitting to describe what's truly going on here. Instead, we can actually change a bit about how we talk and how we think in order to be able to disassociate with this personal existence view. So instead of saying to your friend or family, can you hand me my phone? You might say things like, can you hand me the phone? Instead of thinking I'm going to my house, I'm going to the house, right? You can change and modify your language like this. Instead of thinking I am angry, instead it's the mind is experiencing anger because there's no I here. In English language, you'll say things like, I am hungry. No, that's not true. I am not hungry because there's no I here. The true reality of this is that the body needs food. That's true reality. There's some physical pain in the stomach, and it's alerting your mind that this body needs food. So it's not that I am hungry, it's that the body needs food. Or it's not that I am thirsty, it's the body needs water. It's not that I am angry, it's the mind is experiencing anger. This can help you to disassociate with this I am in this personal existence view. Then there's things like developing the perception of impermanence deeply in the mind through observing in the world how things are constantly changing. Because your mind will cling to this self-image and this self-identity, thinking that this is who you are as a person, where in reality, none of this is actually who you are, and it's clinging to it, wanting it to be permanent. So you need to be able to look around the world and see everything around you is constantly changing. Anything that you see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body or any thoughts or ideas going through the mind, it's all impermanent. But the mind's craving permanence in the unenlightened state and is holding on to this self-identity and this self-image. So you need to be able to look around the world and see that things are constantly changing. You can also change your clothing and your appearance because remember, the mind's clinging to this self-image, wanting to appear to others in a certain way, even standing in front of the closet, putting on certain clothes and deciding whether or not you can go outside or not, right? Maybe doing your hair in a certain way, trying to get every little hair in exactly the right spot. This is why the Buddha shaved his hair, right? He shaved his hair because it helped him to eliminate personal existence view. Not everybody has to shave their hair in order to be able to get to enlightenment. If just the idea of shaving off your hair and you're just like, oh, that would be really hard. That's your personal existence view. It would be wise to do that at some point when you build up to your practice to that point, eliminating your head hair and your facial hair, because you will tend to cling to this as who you think you are as a person. And you need to get comfortable with going outside the way this body currently appears, but you also need to be willing to go outside and feel comfortable in other ways too. So what you're doing here is you're introducing some impermanence with your head hair and your facial hair, because the mind will tend to cling to this as who you think you are. So that's why the Buddha shaved his hair. Same thing with clothing, that he used to wear rag robes, because prior to him becoming enlightened, he was actually a prince destined to become a king. I can only imagine the type of clothing that he was wearing. It was probably very elaborate, very fancy clothing with, probably certain jewels and certain gold and certain, things like that to be able to show this wealth. That's what royal families usually do, right? They kind of dress a certain way to be able to show this position of being a king or a queen or a prince or a princess. So when he decided to get to enlightenment, he decided to wear simple rag robes. In fact, at one point, somebody gave him a very rich, elaborate fabric in order to be able to make a robe out of, and he accepted the gift, but he turned to one of his students and he asked the student to rip this up into shreds and sew it back together and then make him a robe out of it, right? So he wasn't interested in kind of showing off with this elaborate fabric. So if you wear simple clothing, this will really help your mind to disassociate with this body as who you are. So if you decided to wear the same clothes every day, you could do that, right? Where you have like white clothes or black clothes or purple clothes, and you wear exactly the same shirt and exactly the same pants every day, right? That might be like, no, I'm not interested in doing that. Well, if you're not interested in doing that, maybe you're not interested in going to be able to purchase new clothing, which you don't necessarily have to do. You can actually accomplish the same thing with your current wardrobe. If you take your current clothes and you just stack them up, like maybe you have casual clothes and you have formal clothes. And now at the beginning of your day, you just peel off of the top, and whatever's on the top of the stack, you just put that on and you go outside. You don't give your mind the opportunity to think, who am I going to see today and how do I want to look? You just peel off of the top and now you wear that. And now you can go outside feeling comfortable no matter what is there. But be careful, because you might try to pull from the middle of the stack because you know who you're going to go see today, and you might try to pull from the middle of the stack. And you need to be able to cut that off and let that go, not allowing the mind to do that. I saw my own mind do that. Even when I was wearing these white clothes, I had these white clothes stacked up, and some of them fit a little bit nicer than others. And I was going to a particular place and I was like, I would like to, have that different feeling. And I was trying to pull from the middle of the stack to get that shirt. And I was like, no, I can't let you do that. And I just peeled off the top, right? So you can just stack up your clothing, and you might be able to do this in 95, 98, 99% of the time. But if you peel off the top of your clothing and it's like ripped up jeans and you're on your way to immigration and you'd like to get a visa from the Thai police, you probably aren't interested in showing up in a bunch of ripped up jeans, right? So you might decide, because those people are maybe looking at you in a certain way, you would like to maybe wear clothing that is suitable for that, right? So in general, mostly you would like to just peel off the top. And you're going to need to do this for probably multiple months, if not years, to be able to train your mind to let go. If you get rid of jewelry and makeup and scents and things like this, these are all things that people tend to use in order to be able to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you would like to strip all that stuff away. You already feel comfortable going outside with your jewelry and with your makeup and with your hair and scents a certain way, but now you need to train your mind to be able to go outside without that stuff. And now when you go outside without that stuff and you can be just as comfortable with it as without it, then you just make personal choices after you've trained your mind of how you would like to go outside. But you're not clinging to it and you're not forming your feelings based on what this body looks like. Then anytime you see the interest in your mind of wanting to project this self-image in the world, you need to be able to cut that off. If you see your mind primping in front of the mirror or something like that, you need to be able to cut that off and let it go. And then over time, seek guidance from a teacher over multiple sessions, where as this personal existence view is arising and you're having difficulties to be able to see it, like the gentleman with the tipping, contact a teacher, somebody that you have confidence in, somebody that you have a relationship with, that you can get some help to be able to understand what's happening. So do you guys have questions on how to eliminate this personal existence view or anything that we've been talking about? Looks like Rachel has a question. Mm-hmm.
I have a question situation that happened this morning.
Okay.
And what would be like I was gonna ride my bike this morning, and pump that I purchased, and I've had it there for a while, and I just leave it on the main floor of our building. It was not there this morning, and I had a flat, so I couldn't ride my bicycle. But this, like, the mind did not feel great about this. What would be wise discernment going forward? Because this is the second bike pump I purchased.
Mm-hmm.
People borrow it, they take it for a couple days, they bring it back, but it wasn't there when I wanted it to be. But this is the second bike pump I purchased because the other one was also broken from multiple usage.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be wise to take the bike pump upstairs and just have it in my area and only take it down when I need it and preserve this bike pump? Or do I actually leave it there and give the mind more opportunity to cut this off, let it go, and understand? Right?
Yeah. So there's two things here. There's what is wise in terms of your financial resources and being able to, provide the needed resources that you need in order to sustain your life. And then there's training the mind to be able to let go of this craving, desire, attachment, right? So you've got to look at both sides of this. Well, in terms of your resources and what resources you have available to you, that's something that only you can decide of if you lost another bike pump or two or three, is that going to impact you financially in a significant way? Because if so, you're going to need to make the decision to put the bike pump in your a place where you have a complete control over it and nobody's going to be able to necessarily get access to it. So you need to look at that part. But if you just started keeping your bike pump in your personal space, it's not going to solve the discontentedness, right? And that's what you're aware of because you've been studying these teachings for a while. So that's where if it's not a big burden to you financially, you might decide to put it there a few more times because you know it's going to go missing at some point because it's impermanent, and that'll help train your mind to let it go. This is where you understand that as long as the mind's clinging to these things, it's not going to be free. So it's kind of like that rag that I talk about of like wringing out the rag and getting every little drop, where the average person will probably say, yeah, just keep your bike pump in your room and then you don't have to, worry about this. Well, you're trying to get rid of the worry, right? And you can't get rid of the worry as long as your mind's clinging to this object. So you might decide to put it there, and that will help your mind. But you've got to manage that based on your resources and your finances, because nobody can make that part of the decision for you. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So now let's look at conceit, so that we can talk about how to eliminate that. That's where the mind's measuring and comparing, putting yourself above people or below people. So one of the things that the mind tends to do when it has conceit is it won't say thank you, sorry, or speak politely using things like sir or ma'am, or even the mind will be unwilling to say things like I don't know. Right? When you ask someone a question, if they have ego, they will say everything and anything other than I don't know. So you would like to get in the habit of actually using these types of phrases where you say thank you, you say sorry, you say things like maybe sir or ma'am, or you are willing to say I don't know. That is very helpful for the ego because your ego won't want to say that, right? Your ego is trying to stick around. So by saying this or versions of this, because each of your languages are different, you probably speak more than one language. A lot of people do. You need to look at those languages and see what is the way to speak in this way with those particular languages. Sleeping in a low position that's not elevated or luxurious is very helpful to eliminate conceit. Sometimes people who are unfamiliar with these teachings and unfamiliar with Asia can't imagine just changing your sleeping position is going to change what's going on in your mind. But that's exactly what it does. That if you sleep on the floor, going down into your bed every day and getting up out of your bed every day, it'll humble the mind. It'll take away some of that ego and conceit. This is one of the best things that you can ever do for the mind's conceit, because it only takes you usually about 2 to 5 minutes to set this up, and then you'll reap the rewards of it long into the future. Because all you need to do is make a shift to your bed, your sleeping position, and now you'll be able to reap the rewards of that. Here in Thailand, it's actually challenging to find a bed that is high, right? Because they understand in Thailand that that's not the ideal way to sleep. But if you look at the countries where the population of people tends to have a very high ego, they tend to sleep in very high positions, and they tend to have very luxurious beds. So here in Thailand, they don't do that. If you go shopping for a bed, most beds are about knee height or below. So you would like to sleep on the floor if you can. So for example, you can get rid of your frame, you can get rid of your box spring, just put the mattress straight down on the floor and sleep on the floor. And you'll see that your mind will actually really reap the rewards of this, that it'll become more and more humble over time. You can do tasks that you think are beneath you. If you think scrubbing the floor on your hands and knees is beneath you, it would be wise for you to do this. If you think scrubbing toilets is beneath you, it would be wise for you to do this. If there's any task that you think like, no, I don't do that, right? That's your mind's ego. And you would like to do those tasks. Put your mind in that situation that it doesn't want to be in and train it to be able to do these kinds of things. Listen to others teach you wisdom without any interest to teach them. That's what you're doing right now. And you would like to do that on a regular basis. But every once in a while, somebody comes here to the temple, or they're literally coming here to the temple to learn, but they think that their role is to teach me or to teach somebody who's here. That's what they're trying to do. They sometimes come to the temple trying to teach other people, right? This isn't what you would like to do in order to get rid of your ego. You would like to put yourself in a position where you're just listening to people teach, and you're not there to teach them anything. You're there to take in information, because at a certain level, your mind is admitting to yourself that you don't know everything there is to know about this world, and there's more things for you to understand. And even though you understand certain things about the world that I don't understand, you're not interested in projecting that onto me and trying to convince me to learn the things that you're learning, for example. So you would like to put yourself regularly in situations where you're listening to other people teach, and you don't have any interest to teach them anything at all. You're just there to listen, absorb, and understand what it is that they're sharing. Also, washing people's feet is one of the things that they do here in Thailand that is wonderful for the mind. Again, people find it really challenging to understand that doing some kind of action like that is going to affect your mind, but it does. They have something here in Thailand called Dam Hua, that either at New Year's, on Mother's Day, Father's Day, maybe on your birthday, you would go to your parents and you would actually sit down and you would actually wash their feet. It's more of kind of a gesture of sharing respect and appreciation and gratitude. Some people do it for their teachers, someone who's like provided you certain input to be able to help you in your life. People will kind of wash their feet. And there's a certain way that they actually do this. So this is really helpful for you to be able to train your mind to let go. Not that you're putting yourself below someone, because in order to respect someone, you don't have to put yourself below someone, but this is a way to help your mind to be humbled. And if you ever do this, if you've never done it before, you might notice that you're kind of shaking while you do this. I did this with my grandmother and with my mom when I was in the USA and they were there. I got down on the floor and I started washing their feet, and I noticed I was shaking. This was the ego. This was triggering the ego, because the ego didn't feel comfortable down there on the floor washing their feet. I felt kind of shaky while I was doing this. That's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to trigger that so that your mind can get rid of it and empty it out of the mind. So you would need to do this multiple times where you're actually washing someone's feet, and it helps train your mind to let go of this conceit or this ego. Here in Thailand, we show respect and gratitude through whying people, right? If you why individuals, this is really helpful for your mind. You might end up doing this 10, 15, 20, 30 times in a given day where you're whying people. Again, you're not putting yourself below people. You're just showing respect and gratitude. Here in Thailand, they do this why, but they also do it in other cultures. I've even seen it a lot in Western cultures. More and more, I even see celebrities whying people. It's kind of becoming an international symbol of appreciation and gratitude towards others. You'll see celebrities accepting awards on award stages, and they will why to the audience and say thank you for this award. So if you're doing this regularly throughout your day, it will really humble the mind. I've traveled all over the world practicing these teachings. I've even not only been to places like America and Mexico, but I've even been to the Middle East and Africa and places like this, where I've also practiced the exact same teachings that I've learned as part of the teachings of the Buddha. So in the USA, it might be, hello, how are you, sir? Good morning, ma'am. How are you? Right? And it might be whying them. Where here in Thailand, it's sawadee krap, right? Or when I went to Egypt, it was assalamu alaikum, right? And I would why to people, and they really ate it up. They really enjoyed the fact that this person was showing them respect and showing gratitude through this gesture. And what it's doing for your mind is it's helping you to humble your mind and not think of yourself as being above people or below people. And you would like to practice generosity, loving kindness, and compassion. These are teachings that I shared a couple of weeks ago with students, helping them to understand what these are and how to practice them. Some more things is eliminate judgment, where you're not comparing yourself as being superior or inferior. Maybe you're looking at your Instagram or your Facebook and you're looking at how many friends you have. And then you're looking at your other people that you associate with to see how many friends do they have, right? And maybe you're measuring and comparing yourself to other people. You'd like to get rid of that. Train your mind to eliminate it. Be kind and gentle with people because it's the right thing to do, not because you want something or expect something from them. You can ask other people advice of what they've learned in life and then just listen without trying to prove anything to them, right? Just sit down and listen. The people have amazing things to be able to teach you. But oftentimes when you're in a social situation and somebody's sharing something about their life, if someone's like, hey, I just got my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, you might be like, well, I have my master's degree in psychology. Right? Well, that's just your ego, right? Instead, just be like, oh, that's wonderful. I'm pleased to hear that. You don't have to talk about what you have. You don't have to talk about your education, right? Unless somebody asks you a question. That's something that you've accomplished for yourself. You don't need to project it. But oftentimes when people have certain accomplishments, nowadays with social media, you got to take a picture of that certificate and you've got to put it out on social media and you've got to let everybody know that you've taken this class and now you're a certified Reiki master, right? Or you're a certified this or a licensed that, right? Hey, just, you don't need to do that. If you choose to do that, that's your choice. But this is your ego trying to show off and be prideful. And people are often taught that you should be prideful. If you've worked really hard for something like a degree, be proud of it and show it to everybody. This is just the mind's ego. You can live your life that way, but it's going to cause you difficulties and struggles because people are going to see that. Their mind's going to end up getting jealous. They don't understand that it's coming from their own mind. And now they're going to have difficulties and struggles in relationships with you. So if you choose to get a license or a certificate or some kind of training, you're doing that for your own personal growth and your development, for your career or your personal life. You can just maintain that as something that you're doing for yourself. You don't need to show off to other people where you're boastful and arrogant and prideful. Then as people are doing things in the world, you can help others without any expectation of anything in return. Like you can just practice generosity with others. You can also seek guidance from a teacher, which helps the mind to admit that it doesn't know everything there is to know about the world. You can cut off and let go of any kind of arrogance or judgment or pride wherever you see your mind doing that. That's why you're doing the breathing mindfulness meditation, to be able to cut off and let go and cut off and let go. It's building this internal mechanism in the mind to be able to cut off and let go. So wherever you see these unwholesome qualities, whether it's personal existence view or conceit coming up in the mind, you can cut it off and let it go, restraining the mind. It's kind of like a wild bush that you're cutting back and cutting back and cutting back and cutting back, and eventually you uproot it out of the mind. And then over multiple sessions, seek guidance to get help from a teacher. So any questions here that you guys have about conceit? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So I understand like the ego and the conceit is kind of like the belief you have of yourself, whether it be like very good or very bad. But what happens when like someone is being mean to you or unfair to you, and you're like, oh, I don't deserve this. And how do you kind of like let go of that? Or is it like, is it useful to talk to this person about it? Like, because I also feel like it comes from a place, oh, I don't deserve to be treated this way. And that's like rooted in what you believe about yourself.
Yes, that's the ego. When someone talks to this being in a certain way, if you think, oh, I don't deserve this, that's the I, right? I don't deserve this. Where in reality, all that's happened is this person has chosen to say a few certain words and certain sounds. Your mind's hearing that and it's forming a certain perception. Instead, you need to be able to understand that some people are going to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, and other people are not. This is just impermanence. This is normal. When you hear someone being impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, just walk away. That's all you need to do. But the ego won't let you do that. The ego is going to want to turn around and say, okay, let's fight, either verbally or physically, right? And that's where you've got to train your mind to cut off and let go and walk away. That's the best thing you can do in that situation. It'll help your mind to eliminate the ego. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. You just need to turn on them. There's a switch on there, a little button.
Okay. I want to ask, should we continue to chase those secularized success? Because if we want to be success in Korea, that means we have to fit in. Like you mentioned, maybe you want to fit in a conference, you have to dress like them, and also, stuff like that.
Okay. So whenever your mind is chasing something, that's what we call craving, desire, attachment. And in that situation, you can only be happy if you get what you want, right? But because of impermanence, you're not always going to get what you want. So if you can only be happy when you get what you want, then that means your happiness is limited. But what you would like to learn how to do is not chase, but also not swing to the other side where you could care less what's going on in your life. Instead, you need to come to the middle where you gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests with enthusiasm and with ambition, but without forming your feelings based on that. So if you have a certain goal and you get happy when you get it and sad or frustrated when you don't get it, that's actually not a goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment. A true goal is something you can gradually work your way towards, and you can maintain your peace and your joy, whether you accomplish it or not. And this means the mind needs to be trained to do this. So it's a matter of pursuing certain goals and objectives through wise decision making without forming feelings based on this. So in a professional environment, you might wear certain clothing that you know that this environment has, but you don't need to allow your mind to adopt any kind of identity based on that. So if you are, picking off the top of your clothes, like I mentioned, for casual clothes or for formal clothes, you're not allowing the mind the opportunity to make the choice. You're just choosing to be able to now go out into this space with whatever clothes were on the top of your stack. Where when you want to appear to others in a certain way, you're allowing the personal existence view to stay there. So there's no harm in you pursuing goals and objectives or going into an environment where this body looks a certain way, but you're not allowing the mind to grab onto that as who you think you are as a person. Okay, Martha, yep.
That the ego doesn't have reasoning anymore. Like before, maybe there was some reasoning because we were animals and we had to kind of protect ourselves. So now when we look into living in this current world, it's useful to know that someone has a skill. So let's say someone is able to make pottery or is a good writer, so they can then just follow up on that skill and then use it, right? So but then they're like, so how to differentiate the ego here? Because it's good, like it's useful. Let's say, like I could use let's say, writing skills, which I actually don't have, but like for, for my work, for example, right?
Yeah.
So how to then differentiate the ego here?
Yeah. So it's a matter of, let's just say that you're taking your daughter to a tailor to be able to get a dress made, right? You might say, oh, this is a tailor, right? You're just saying that this person is a tailor, but that's not your ego because you're just referring to this person so that your daughter knows where you're going. But the tailor, if the tailor thinks I am a tailor, and now that's their personal existence view, they're going to experience difficulties and struggles when they hear all tailors are one thing or another. They're going to experience discontent feelings in this situation. So you're going to need to be able to say, oh, this is a police officer. Let's talk to the police officer. Those are things that we use in order to be able to help us navigate the world. But it would be wise for that police officer to not adopt in their mind that that's who they are as a person. And that's where that person can get to liberation. So this is all about what your mind is holding on to based on your activities and your roles. It's a matter of doing these things without allowing your mind to adopt the identity. So for example, this mind doesn't think I am a Buddhist teacher. I don't think that way, right? I understand I'm in this role of sharing teachings of the Buddha, but my mind, this mind, doesn't have the identity of I am a Buddhist teacher, because it's only a matter of time before someone says something favorable or unfavorable about Buddhist teachers, and now your mind's experiencing discontentedness. So it's a matter of performing the role without allowing the mind to adopt the identity. And that's where the mind needs to strip that away. Okay, so just one more thing before I end class is this is the words of the Buddha, where he's helping you to be able to understand, gain honor and praise, and how much of a challenge it is for the enlightened mind in getting to enlightenment. He says, monks, gain honor and praise, I say, are an obstacle, even for a monk who is an arahant, one with taints destroyed. So an arahant is an enlightened being. And if there's taints are destroyed, that means their pollutions of mind are eliminated. He says, so then his student, Ananda, asked him this question. He says, when this was said, the Venerable Ananda asked Master Teacher Gautama, why, Venerable Sir, are gain, honor, and praise an obstacle, even for a monk with taints destroyed? You know, Ananda is one of his close students. He's like, hold on a second. If someone's enlightened, why would gain, honor, and praise be an obstacle for them? Because once you're enlightened, you don't have any difficulties and struggles anymore. Why would gain, honor, and praise be an obstacle for an enlightened being? So Ananda's, curious about this. And the Buddha says, I do not say, Ananda, that gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle to his unshakable liberation of mind, but I say they are an obstacle to his attainment of those peaceful dwellings in this very life, which are achieved by one who resides diligent, dedicated, and determined. So what he's saying is, I didn't say that once he's enlightened, or this person is enlightened, that gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle. What I'm saying is that it's an obstacle for him to attain enlightenment. If this person is interested in attaining enlightenment, you've got to make sure that you don't allow your mind to be affected by this gain, honor, and praise. Because the more enlightened you become, as your mind becomes more awake, you are going to have people that tell you, oh my gosh, you are so kind. You are so friendly. Wow, you are so wise. You are so smart. You are so intelligent. You can't go out into the world and teach other people how you want them to interact with you, because there's 8 billion people in the world. People are going to give you compliments sometimes. But if you allow that gain, honor, and praise to obsess your mind, you're going to be quite arrogant and prideful, right? So if you put yourself above and below people, that's something that your mind's doing. This path to enlightenment isn't about going out into the world and telling other people how they should function. It's about training your mind to understand what's wise or unwise. And when you see this gain, honor, and praise coming at you, you've got to maintain your humbleness. You've got to keep your mind in this humble position, right? Where you're not putting yourself above and below people. Because the Buddha goes on here. He says, so dreadful, Ananda, are gain honor and praise, so bitter, vile, obstructive to achieving the unsurpassed security from bondage, enlightenment. Because if you allow your mind to become obsessed with ego and arrogance, this conceit, it's not going to allow you to get to enlightenment. He says, therefore, Ananda, you should train yourselves thus. We will abandon the arisen gain honor and praise, and we will not let the arisen gain honor and praise persist, obsessing our mind. Thus should you train yourselves, right? So this is very important to keep in mind, that wherever you see your mind kind of puffing up, wanting to be boastful, have a chip on your shoulder, get rid of all of that. That's what the Buddha is saying, is let all that stuff go. It's unfortunate that nowadays, when you spend time around some people who are ordained, they tend to think of themselves as being above you. If you go around ordained practitioners and you why them, they typically won't show respect back, because they're taught that they are above you and that you are a household practitioner and you're below them. That's not what the Buddha taught. So if you interact with people that are functioning that way or thinking that way or interacting that way, understand that when you why to somebody, this is for your practice. This is for you to be able to humble your mind. And if you're showing respect to someone, you shouldn't expect something to come back. Just because you're being respectful doesn't mean somebody else is going to be respectful back. So this practice is about your practice. It's about your decisions. What other people choose to do, that's their choice. So when you go around the world, you'd like to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. And that doesn't mean everyone is going to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to you. But remember, your practice is for you. So if you're interacting with someone who chooses to be disrespectful, that's their choice. But you maintain your politeness, your kindness, your friendliness, and respect, even if it's a Buddhist monk or someone who considers themselves to be a Buddhist monk. Because the Buddha says that even though you're shaving your hair and you're wearing certain clothes, that's not what makes you a Buddhist monk. What makes you a Buddhist monk is your actions, the way that you function in the world. So if you're around someone and you choose to why them and they choose not to why you back, either maybe they just forgot or they didn't notice, or maybe they're tired, or maybe they are being disrespectful for whatever reason. That's their reasoning. But this whying that you're doing, it's not for other people and because you want something back from them. It's because it's good for your mind and it's humbling your mind. So you'd like to eliminate this gain, honor, and praise, because you're going to be around people who aren't doing that. You're going to be around people who are arrogant and prideful and egotistical, and you're not interested in allowing that to affect your mind. In fact, a lot of times people joke nowadays. They tell jokes that are arrogant or egotistical, and people laugh at it, right? So that's fine if that's what they choose to do, but just make sure that your mind's not doing that, because it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. And then lastly, it's important that you always and forever develop and practice the elimination of ego. Never assume that the ego has been extinguished, because the ego is going to constantly be in there trying to convince you that you're more enlightened than you really are, because then the ego gets to stick around. It's kind of like, do you guys know that game Whack-A-Mole, where the moles pop up and you stand there with a mallet and you hit them and then they go back down, right? Well, if you think game's over and you hold the mallet to your side and now another one pops up, you're not going to be able to whack it, right? So you're never interested in assuming the ego's gone, because as soon as you assume that it's gone, it's going to creep back in on you and you're not paying attention and you can't whack it. So just never assume that the ego's gone. Never assume that you're actually enlightened. Don't convince yourself that you're enlightened. Just always and forever, as you're practicing, wherever you see ego or arrogance or pride arising, cut that off and let it go. Don't assume that the ego's gone. One of the best ways to know that someone has ego is they will say that they've eliminated their ego. By the way, I am so humble that I've eliminated my ego. I'm more humble than you are, right? This is the ego, right? So don't allow your mind to do that. And maybe other people choose to do that, but it's important that you don't allow your mind to do that. So any last questions you guys would like to ask before I end class? No questions? Okay. So I'll just end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to understand the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you to do that. This evening at 6:30 here, it syncs up to the Sunday night walking market. I'm going to be doing loving kindness meditation, which is different than what we did this morning. This is a meditation that rewires your mind to be loving and kind and warm and gentle, helps you eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will towards others, but it also helps you eliminate negative self-talk in your own mind. Oftentimes people have a degrading, diminishing inner dialogue. This will help you to eliminate that. And then at 9 p.m. tonight, I'm going to be teaching this same topic here as well, because I teach it on 2 time zones, because I live stream, and like right now the people in Europe are sleeping, so it allows them the opportunity to be able to have a live class. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be teaching as well here. You can see it on the bulletin board over there. And even on Friday, we have a social event where we have temple fun night, where we have kind of like a little party here. So you're welcome to come to that as well. You'll see all of the details on our bulletin board or on our website, and you can even talk to me and I'll help you get plugged into these resources. Because while we're in chapter 16 today, I recommend that people who are just starting out start with this first book. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon. This is the best place to start. And then each Sunday I go chapter by chapter, helping students to be able to understand the foundational teachings to make your way to enlightenment. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.